Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is September the 9th, and thanks for being with me. I'm going to let you guys know that I went looking for the news this morning to find out what's going on in the world, and it might be the dumbest day that I can remember in a really long time. And I kept reading these stories, and I kept calling my wife over. I'm like, honey, I got to read you this story. This is crazy. Look how dumb this is. And then I got another story, and then I sent it over to my buddies. I go, this is the dumbest headline that I've read this week, and it'll probably be the dumbest of the month. And we're really early in the month. Why are we in this situation? So I'm going to read you some dumb headlines. I'm going to share with you some dumb stories. And I'm going to tell you about the distractions that we're dealing with. But this is almost like a grab bag. Sometimes there's a theme that I see in the day and I see coverage. The coverage right now is that we are dumb. This country is doing dumb things. And I don't know how bad we got there. And then it turns out I get this other little email pops in from my friends over at Catholic Vote. Shameless plug for the folks that supported us for as long as they did. If you haven't checked out the loop, you guys are missing out. So go check out the loop. Today's loop, it actually had the answer about why we're dumb. It's the same thing I've been thinking all week. I've been meditating on the book of Judges. And we're in one of those cycles. The entire book of Judges is a cycle of failure to track what's going on with God, what's going on with our nation, why we are disconnected from it. And God bless him, Donald Trump did the prayer breakfast and said, what if we just got back to doing the things that we used to do? This is a message that resounds throughout history for several thousand years, it turns out. So there you go. And if any of you guys are having any trouble with the stream, I'll apologize up front. There's nothing I can do about it, but we did have about 20 different, we'll call them anomalies in our internet service yesterday. I tried to talk to some attorneys and found myself disconnected regularly, and we had some sort of widespread failure of Verizon towers. And then on top of that, I had 20 different disconnects from my primary and my secondary internet yesterday throughout an hour or so. And then it happened again over the night at about 1 o'clock until 2 a.m. We had another half dozen or more disconnections from both different internet connections. So either the Austin, Texas area is suffering from some internet anomalies, or as I shared with some of my friends who are suspendables and even our new buddy, Bill Taylor, looks like what happens when someone starts screwing around with your internet connection. So nothing that we can do about it. If you guys get any issues, you can always go over and watch us on Spotify. So I'll go ahead and plug our Spotify channel. If you have never used the Spotify app, if you are usually a live viewer, obviously it's not going to be something you need. But if it's something that you watch in the replay and you guys want a little bit more control over it, KyleSeraphinShow.com is the easy way to do it. And you can always share and subscribe that way. If you guys are watching on Rumble, great. We appreciate you. For those of you who have started following us on X, also appreciate it. Growing audience there. It's awesome. Our locals channel sometimes has less issues than Rumble. It's the same different engine, but for some reason it goes to a different spot. So go check them out. And then the Spotify app is KyleSeraphinShow.com, and you can easily share that with a friend. But more importantly, you can watch it, you can listen to it, you can switch between audio and video. It's a free app. It costs me nothing to give it to you. And so all that stuff is pretty neat. And if you've never used that app, and I didn't before Apple, it's great. It actually is really good. I think it's superior to the Apple app in many ways because it allows you to do audio and video, and you can switch between. And maybe when you guys watch the palate cleanse for this afternoon or for this, for the end of today's show, you'll want to see it because it's mostly an audio thing, but you kind of need the visual to go along with it. There's not much to it, but you'll want that. So anyhow, that's what I'm going to lead with. Let's dive into today's first sponsor, because we are sponsored, at least in part, by the folks over at My Patriot Supply. I'm really grateful for them supporting us. And more importantly, I guess maybe for you, is that they're running a great deal right now. It is September, which makes it Emergency or National Preparedness Month. If you guys want to get yourself prepped up for any potential emergency, if you want to make sure you're not the person that's sitting there saying, hey, shoot, do we have food? Looks like there's a hurricane inbound. Do we have water? Do we have a way to purify it? Or are we going to have the taps go dry and then find ourselves running around and drinking out of puddles like my dog used to do? What if a storm knocks out the power? What if it takes a week for them to get it back? This is something that's happened for people. If you guys want to make sure that you are upping your capabilities to ensure your own survival, You can do so with my friends over at mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. There's a link in the show description. Right now, they're giving away over $1,500 worth of emergency food and preparedness. All of that stuff is something that you can go find on their website. They have all kinds of different options, including the Preparedness Month Mega Kit, which is a huge thing. It's a full year of food and it has water systems in there. You can also get a solar backup and all kinds of other stuff as well. So if you guys want to check in with them, it's a investment in your own sort of mental health, so you don't have to panic when things go wrong, when there's storms brewing, when there's earthquakes, when there's natural disasters, or God forbid, man-made, like we saw during the sort of COVID chaos when people were shutting down the streets and making sure you had to stand in line for a Costco toilet paper. You can go ahead and start building up your supplies there. Prepare, don't repair. mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. Let's get into some dumb stuff and then maybe the answer to it as well. All right, so I cannot emphasize how stupid this story is. You read it and then you go, okay, that's a bad headline. And then the more and more I got into it, the dumber and dumber it got. And so here is the story. This is an old picture of a man named Albert Sturgill Jr. It's a 20-something-year-old picture because when he died, he was about 60 years old. And the headline, which comes from NBC News, is that he flipped a middle finger at a war memorial and then he was shot dead. Now, I'm trying to get the context or the subcontext in this story, and maybe it's like an anti-gun thing. I will tell you that the reporter who wrote the story's name is Melissa Chen, and sometimes you can find a lot about people in the way that they describe themselves. So let me tell you how NBC describes her and what her job is. Melissa Chen is a reporter for NBC News Digital with a focus on veteran issues, mental health in the military, and gun violence. So maybe that adds some context to this story. It needs context because it's really pretty wild. There was a fatal quarrel in a small town called Crossville, Tennessee. It was captured on video. It sparked outrage from the victim's family and residents who say that he didn't deserve to die. All right. So here's the story. This guy's name, Albert Sturgill Jr., he was pacing alone at a memorial site for veterans, a war memorial that many small towns in America have. And he was flipping the middle finger at the American flag and the monuments that are erected to fallen soldiers. Now, this is America, and you have a right to be a jerk. So this is a First Amendment protected activity. And according to his family, he was known for displaying such behavior at the war memorial and other parts of the small conservative city of Crossville, Tennessee, due to his deep-rooted disdain for the government, resentment for being rejected by the military, and his possible mental health issues. We've got a perfect suite of stupid in one place. So he hated the government. I think that's pretty rational and reasonable. He resented being rejected from military service. That's kind of an unusual sort of twist to the game. And then also had mental health issues. Shocker. A 60-year-old man marching around in front of a war memorial on the regular, flipping the bird. Go figure. Folks said that he was a real noticeable figure in the area. He's done this numerous other times. He generally tried not to engage anyone that was angered by his actions, according to his niece. So family says this is just what he does. Just goes out there and flips the bird. By the way, the war memorial is very, very nice looking. It is a beautiful sort of cobblestone setup, and then it goes up some steps, and then there is a kind of an obelisk looking thing that has a plaque, and like many cities, it has the veterans from that area and what they did. All right. So this all comes down to a chaotic confrontation where three men were involved, including Sturgis, who was 63 years old at the time, shot in the neck and then died from his injuries. The incident was captured on video, and it sparked outrage because the victim's family and the other residents said he wasn't justified in being killed. There's an Army veteran who served in Vietnam says, I don't care what he was doing. He didn't deserve to be shot. He had every right to object to whatever he wants, even though I don't agree with it. And so this is who is involved. 63-year-old man rejected from the military because of what I can make out from the story. He wasn't able to score high enough on the ASVAB. Now, my military veterans out there know what I'm talking about here. But if you've ever enlisted, and I enlisted in the Air Force, so theoretically the Air Force claims that they have a higher standard than some of the other groups, like I'm not looking at you, Army, but I'm looking over at the Army. Joe is known for not necessarily requiring the highest IQ to join, and we appreciate his service either way. But you don't have to be much of a genius to enter the Army. This guy got rejected for an ASVAB score. That's not a good start. Remember, Forrest Gump made it in, right? That sort of idea. That idea. Okay, at 5:30 on this day, there's a trophy shop that's across the street. They're closing up shop, and they look over, and they see this guy, and he's walking back and forth in front of the Cumberland County Veteran Memorial Park, giving his finger to the war monument, as was a common sight on Main Street with this guy. And then cars started slowing down to a stop, creating a little jam up in the road. You can imagine a small town traffic jam. The drivers began rolling down their windows, but the guy who was in the store said he couldn't hear what was being said. One of the men's name was Eric Garrison. He was a 42-year-old Crossville resident who also didn't serve in the military. Now we have two non-veterans upset with a inanimate object and the flicking off of the flag. The 42-year-old Crossville resident has not served in the military, but he has a deep and abiding respect for it because his great-grandfather received a Purple Heart for heroism during World War II. Are we dumb enough yet? We have a man who is incredibly incensed because of his great-grandfather's military service, and he didn't have his own. You'll notice that they did quote a 78-year-old Vietnam vet who's like, yeah, that's kind of what you fight for. Some people in America suck, and you just accept it. The theory is that, I don't necessarily agree with what you have to say, but I will defend to my death your right to say it. That's kind of a great American attitude. So now two non-veterans are going to have this problem. There's this guy is 42 years old, and he's married. His wife cannot talk him out of getting out. So the guy says, I know it's a free country and I know you have free speech, but what you're doing is wrong and people died for you. And so they get into this cursing thing. It turns out that the 63-year-old guy has he has a prosthetic foot and some sort of like a stick or a cane because he got into some accident. I'll call it NFI. No further information why he has no foot, but he's missing a foot, potentially because he's not bright enough to make it into the military. And then he begins to swing the stick frantically. I'm just paraphrasing here because the story is just goofier and goofier as you get on. He begins hitting people in the head, including this guy, Eric Garrison. Eric Garrison is struck at least 2 times, maybe 3 times. Hard to understand what they're saying. And then he goes back to his vehicle and gets a gun and then sees another person potentially struck. And then he fires the gun, hits the guy in the neck, and then he dies. So 2 men who are not military veterans are fighting over a military memorial. One because of their deep respect from Grandpa's service, and the other because he's mad that he wasn't allowed to be in the military in the first place, and then he decided to hate the government. That's brilliant. That's where we're at today. That's the story that I saw. And I went, what a ridiculous, sad, and stupid state of affairs. How do you get to the point where you're so incensed by an inanimate object and a war memorial that you're going to march around in front of it on the regular and you're going to flick it off, which is going to upset some other guy who has nothing to do with your mental illness? Yesterday, I got into a little discussion with Bill Taylor, who was on our Sunday sit down. He and I have been talking quite a bit over the last couple days. And somebody has accused me of being part of Crossfire Hurricane and the secret plan to have NSA sex slaves that Crossfire Hurricane was involved in. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you, it doesn't make any sense to anybody because there's a lot of really mentally ill people in this country. Bill, like a classic FBI agent, was asking questions of this person over on X. Hey, tell me more. Why does the NSA or NASA need sex slaves? What are you talking about? This person's like, Kyle Seraphin knows who I am and how I know him and all this other stuff. Like, first of all, I wasn't even in the FBI when they did Crossfire Hurricane. So that's even funnier. So anyway, all this mental illness is out there. It's proliferating at a really high level. And what we realize is, and I think we've talked about this on the program, we've certainly talked about it on our call-in show, that we have this group of people who are mentally ill in this country who would have never been in the same situation even 15 years ago. But because of the way that we're able to interconnect as a society, because of the potential that the internet offers for people to, find long-lost loved ones and find family members, because we have this ability to connect, you also have wackos and crazies who have the ability to link up with each other and create the unfalsifiable premise that whatever I say, whatever crazy thing that is happening in my head is real. My rage at the government and my rage at this war memorial is real. And anybody who says otherwise is in on it. That's kind of how the mentally ill work. Now, if you've worked in law enforcement, if you've worked in a hospital, if you've worked in any kind of psychiatric facility, then you have definitely seen what I'm talking about. On the regular, there are phone calls that come in. If you've worked at the FBI has a facility out in West Virginia where they take phone calls all day long. This is one of the reasons why the quote unquote on the FBI's radar is really a bad way to indicate things, because nonstop crazy people call in and say crazy things that are beyond substantiation. Okay. And if you've been in those fields, like I said, any law enforcement, any EMS, any emergency room facility, then you've had these people come in. And there's nothing you can do with them. So we just tolerate them in society. But why? And why are we letting them go on? And what can it lead to? It can lead to a footless man or a one-footed man getting shot in the neck because he spends a regular time offending everybody, even though what he's doing probably is not good for him. It's not good for the society. There's no benefit to anybody, right? And I found this other story, and this was also pretty dark and sad. A grieving family. This is from Louisiana. So we go from Tennessee to Louisiana. And I'm just kind of, like I said, there's no particular order to the stories per se, but a grieving family is now taking care of a tiny baby girl delivered from a 17-year-old mother who was shot in a road rage incident. She's this pretty little blonde girl. She's got a nose ring. Not a little keen on that. She's no longer with us because she was sitting in the passenger seat while her boyfriend was driving her around. And this man on the right decided to take a pot shot into the car. And he's not like some teenager or some gangbanger. He's a 54-year-old black man named Barry West. You have a tiny little white girl with blonde hair, and she was killed. And the strange sort of miraculous thing that happens is that her baby was delivered safely and is now being cared for, because we can take a baby at 3 pounds, 11 ounces and nurse them into a full person. They make it. That didn't used to be the case. In my lifetime, that is a novel experience. It used to be that 1 month premature was too much. And in this case, they were able to make this baby, they were helping this baby survive. So now, because she chose to keep a baby and she was a teenage mother, which is not something that we think is very normal, I think, for most people in civilized society in America in 2025, the family has some continuation. The story goes is that she was riding in rural Louisiana. Her boyfriend and her sister were in the car. Sheriff's office says it was 9 a.m. in the morning on a Sunday morning. On a Sunday morning, this guy lost his mind. And the claim is that there was either some sort of back and forth between road rage and brake checking and people pulling out in front of each other. The boyfriend maintains is that he's got pregnant girlfriend in the car and is worried about the safety, that the guy was driving erratically. So he tried to pass and get away, but this guy apparently was incensed. Anyhow, doesn't matter what the end of the story was, is because one person decided to introduce a firearm and take a shot into the rear of the vehicle. It entered in through the rear windshield, as I understand it, and then hit her and killed her through the headrest. The man claims that he believed the occupants of the vehicle in front of him had shot at him first. This is going to get into our story about Greta Thunberg, because without video evidence, what do we think? Who knows? There's no evidence that there were other shots fired. There was no weapon in the victim's car. Sounds like this guy just decided to take a shot, and maybe he had a good reason for believing it. Maybe he didn't. And then he's been booked on for murder. So his life is going to be ruined. Her life is going to be ruined. And a baby will grow up without a mom. All that is crazy to me. These were buried in the news stories because this is everyday stuff in America right now. This is just how it is. You wonder why that is. Why is it that we have somebody deciding that you cut me off equals I fire a shot in and kill a teenage mother and leave a baby without a mom in the world? And I'm going to turn to our president right now, who had some thoughts about this. Not this specifically, but I do think it ties in. Discussion about what happened to us as a nation, where this is something that gets buried because it's not even substantial news. This is like an everyday occurrence.
Thomas Jefferson himself once attended Sunday services held in the old House chamber on the very ground where I stand today. So there could be nothing more beautiful than for us to gather in this majestic place. It is majestic, and reaffirm that America is and will always be one nation under God. At every stage of the American story, our country has drawn hope and courage and inspiration from our trust in the Almighty. Deep in the soul of every patriot is the knowledge that God has a special plan and a glorious mission for America. And that plan is going to happen. It's going to happen. I hope it happens sooner rather than later. It's going to happen. And it's His hand that guides us every single step of the way. And all of you and the things we have to do is to see the defining role that faith and prayer have played in the life of our nation. And you just have to look at this building, and you can look at each other. You can really look at each other. It's defined almost everyone in this room. I think faith has been very strong with the people in this room.
And it's missing right now, isn't it? You got to give Trump, I guess, a little bit of leeway because he's kind of new to this game. Yesterday, I didn't cover the story, but the first day of the Ryan Routh trial, which was the man who was stalking President Trump and going to potentially, take a shot at him at the golf course, this assassination attempt, this attempted murder there, that happened. It started. They're picking the jury pool. So we are in the opening stages of what's going on. It is not front page news either. That's all behind us now. We've moved on. And you can imagine that Trump has, in all the crazy things that have been going on in this country, you can imagine that probably weighs in his heart that two people set about to take him off the planet for various reasons, some of which probably involve some mental illness. Some of it involves some of the media radicalization. Some of it involves this ongoing drumbeat that he's literally Hitler or the worst thing that ever happened. And somehow that this was, that would have been the righteous thing to do. We've cheapened human life in this country so much. And you'll remember that one of the figures that was central and essential in the targeting of Donald Trump was in the lawfare space. So we had a special counsel that was looking into him. We had an attorney general that was happy to go after him. You had some local DAs that were going to do that in Georgia. And then we had the entire state of New York, which wanted to rewrite their laws in order to turn a misdemeanor into a felony and keep it around. And one of those people was Letitia James. Now, she's currently under investigation by the DOJ. It looks like tit for tat to me. They're going after her for potentially mortgage fraud. I think a lot of people get away with doing a lot of things, and the FBI, generally speaking, doesn't have the bandwidth to go after mortgage fraud unless there's a bigger sort of story behind it. If you happen to make a false statement and they warn you, this was the joke. I used to work for the Bureau and I bought, 1, 2, 3 houses while I was working for the FBI. So you'd always get this little warning when you guys buy a new house. If you know this, you get an FBI mortgage fraud warning, and that false statements can be used and you can be prosecuted for it. And the FBI investigates mortgage fraud. The fact of the matter is the FBI does not investigate mortgage fraud, broadly speaking. But they are going to do it for Letitia James' case. And one of the reasons is because I think she specifically ran on targeting Donald Trump. She also has run on this leftist sacrament, which is an evil, which plagues our country. So Trump doesn't specifically mention it, as I could tell in his speech. But one of the things that you do when you turn away from God is that you devalue the lives in front of you. Wouldn't you have to devalue the life to think that somebody cut me off on the road, and rather than just stop and let them go and add 60 seconds to your commute and never see that person again, you've decided that you need to pull a gun out and shoot through the rear windshield? Wouldn't it be crazy enough to just think that, hey, that guy's very upset about something? He's marching around in front of a memorial and he's flicking off the American flag. Men died for that flag, but men also died for his right to be a jerk in this country. You're allowed to be a white supremacist. You're allowed to be a complete and utter dickhead in America. It's not inciting violence to walk around and flick off an inanimate object. So you can hate it all you like. Or maybe he lost someone that he loved, if you don't know the guy's story. Maybe he lost someone and he is destroyed by that. What do you know? You're going to go get a gun and you're going to shoot someone when you can easily just walk away? Why would you do that? There was no imminent danger of death or serious physical injury. Now you are the person who's going to have your life. So multiple lives ruined because of a devaluation of human life. And maybe that starts at the beginning. That's just a take that we should consider. Because in my lifetime, from the time that I was a high school student to the time that I'm a man now with 4 children, we've gone from abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, which was stating implicitly that it is not a good thing, to we will defend it. And if you are an anti-abortion person, then you are actually the immoral type. Here's Letitia James. I found this clip to be so incredible that you can get away with running on this platform in America in 2025. And this is something that you think is a winner for regular people. And apparently it actually is in places like New York.
My name is Letitia James, and I am honored and privileged to serve as the Attorney General of the great state of New York. We have reached a new frontier in the fight for abortion rights. Anti-abortion extremists are looking past their own state borders, targeting providers in states like New York, states that stand firm in defense of reproductive freedom. Right now, the Texas Attorney General is trying to use New York courts to enforce Texas's abortion bans. He's suing because his office was blocked from filing papers to collect a $113,000 judgment against a New York doctor who provided telehealth abortion care that is fully legal here in New York. Today, my office is intervening in this lawsuit. We are stepping in to defend New York's Shield Law. These extremists are coordinating a national campaign to chip away at reproductive freedom, freedom that New York proudly chose to protect in law. I will not stand for it. In a post-Roe world, states like New York are the last line of defense. For many patients across the country, New York providers are the only option for care. And that's why today we are drawing a line in the sand. Do not come for our doctors. Do not come for our providers. We passed our Shield Law for exactly this reason.
So she's going to defend people who kill babies with everything she has, because that's the values that they're out there talking about. And that's a winner politically in the state of New York. Pretty wild. What a dark place that's the claim. And remember, reproductive freedom is just a euphemism for we should be able to kill small people who are inconvenient to us so that we can have, I don't know what, like jobs, so we can work. And you wonder, well, why would that need to be if the family was intact? Of course, the family is not intact. And all of this stuff is in this background and this story that conservative media has been covering, and we've seen mainstream media almost essentially ignore at every level, of a young woman who was in the United States who was killed in North Carolina, black man sitting behind her on the bus. And so the question is like, why? Why are there people involved in senseless killings? And I don't think it's as simple as skin color and that's the end of the day, although there are plenty of people who would make that argument. There's a mental health crisis that's clearly involved in it. You have to be a little bit sick in the head to be able to go out there and bring a gun after you've already left a confrontation because you don't value human life. Now, if you've been arrested 13, 14 times and there's nothing that you add to society anymore, we should be asking questions. Why are people who are not safe to be amongst our population allowed out there? There's a lot of weird guilt and things like that. And you see people that have this sort of fatal empathy. That's not good. But also there's a devaluation of human life that seems very, very obvious. And interestingly enough, Donald Trump talking about it, and I'll save it till the end, he actually says really simply what the answer should be. But it's the same answer that people have had forever. Again, you can run back to biblical times. You can look at the cycle of failure. And the further that a society gets from values and God that says that human life has dignity, then you run away. And you find yourself in a very hellish scenario where you are not smiled upon. And favor does not fortune you, or fortune does not favor you, rather. I got a couple of other little weird little stories, too, that are going to kind of tie this together because our mainstream media is doing what they do, which is focus on the stories they think are important. And it seems antithetical to a America that actually is a country. They don't seem interested in that. I'm going to show you two stories that made me just my head spin. They have nothing to do with murders, thank God. So we'll talk about those in a second. First, I'm going to just remind you that no one's going to look out for your freedom the way you do. Certainly not your government. Your government is potentially spending money to try to kill babies. So if you guys want to protect yourself, you want to keep yourself safe from cyber hackers and threats and scams and so on and so forth, the easiest way to do so is to make sure that you have a service that wipes your name and your personal data off the web. You can do that with folks like Patriot Protect. The website is patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Tomorrow we'll do a guest segment with the founder or one of the co-founders of Patriot Protect, talking about some of the new scams, some of them that have happened even this month, and data breaches. They're constantly happening. So AT&T is losing millions and millions of login credentials. Your banks are potentially losing these things. You can also look at healthcare portals and so on. Cyber criminals don't even need to hack it. They don't have to go out there and do brute force. Somebody's already done it, or they found them left in the open because there's some insecurity online, and then they can just take your stuff. And once they have your stuff, they could either pretend to be you using your name, your address, your phone number, and more, or maybe they call you and pretend to be a legitimate company and they scam even more things out of you. It's generally speaking not an if, but a when you'll be targeted. So the easiest way to do it is to try to keep your name out of that pile and make yourself as hard to find as possible. You'll be shocked to find out how inexpensively they can target you and what that opportunity cost looks like. It's very, very low. Again, check out Patriot Protect, patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Look at the blackout service. This is something that comes along with it. They scan the dark web looking for all your information to find out if it's been sold, so you guys know how to protect yourself. And then they're also trying to pull stuff down from all the data broker websites, which are constantly going back up. So it is a 24/7 sort of battle that you are constantly fighting, this cold war against scammers trying to take your stuff and the things that you've earned. So if you guys don't want to be scammed, that is an unfortunate reality. Another thing that happens in a low trust society when people start taking your things. Patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Link in the show description below. Let's do this story, which doesn't immediately have an obvious connection, but I'm going to tell you that it's part of a macro messaging campaign done by our mainstream media. They don't focus on people that are here legally. They don't focus on people that are Americans and the bad things that happen to them and some of the bad policies that we've done. This is a story from CBS, and I found it absolutely fascinating because once you dig into the details of it and you just take a little bit of an analytical brush to it, you go, dear God, is this really what's most important? End of temporary protected status could exacerbate shortage of healthcare aides, advocates warn. And you think, well, dear God, are we going to have not enough people to care for the elderly and the sick? Turns out, if you have a functioning family structure like America has had for 200 years, you actually have people that are in a place to do that. If you have women not working in the home and they are doing the caring thing, which is overwhelmingly who does these jobs, well, you wouldn't have to pay someone to come in and do it. You could just do that. Imagine all the cycles of life that people require care in. When you're an infant, unlimited amounts of care. When you're a child, still significant amounts of care. Then you launch into teenage status and you have a little bit of autonomy. You move into an adulthood and then you have more autonomy. And then it turns out most people end up needing some help as they get older in life. And we outsource that now because the things that women used to do and the caring professions are now paid professions. So some stranger comes in and takes care of your loved ones. And you hope that they care. Having worked in nursing homes pretty significantly as a paramedic and taking people in and out of memory care facilities and so on, they care about as much as they're getting paid or as good as their character is. And so that varies very widely. I've been in nursing care facilities where nobody ever visited a patient that I was picking up and they were having, difficulty breathing. So we were going to take them to an emergency room. And you'd go in and find feces smeared on the wall and their sheets hadn't been changed in weeks. And they were, sleeping in a adult diaper that hadn't been changed. So they're just laying in their own piss and filth. And somebody was making some medium wage to be able to earn that, and they just ignored them. Very regular. We're going to be losing some of the people that do that work, which doesn't pay all that great. I found this story to be kind of interesting because they're going to make it about one person who, in theory, would be like one of the most sympathetic people you could tell a story about, because this is not all the stories. Ed Weinstein's stroke paralyzed the right side of his body and had left his daughter Caroline scrambling. Why? Oh, because they couldn't take care of him. I think I just explained why that was too. Now, we knew the only way that he would survive and I would survive would be able to have him at home with home care. And so she became the home health aide at that point. The first time since my dad's stroke, we trusted somebody, we hired somebody else in. We brought Marcia. She's 53 years old. She's from Honduras. So initially it was the daughter who was going to take care. Apparently she couldn't. No further information, but we assume that she went to work. And they brought in a 53-year-old healthcare aid worker from Honduras. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Temporary protected status. What does that word have in it as the first word? Temporary. One would think that would mean for a transient amount of time, for a short period of time. How many of you think that 25 years is temporary? That's more permanent than any of my children have had in any of the places that we've lived. This woman, Marcia, began her healthcare aid time after Hurricane Mitch, which devastated her home country of Honduras 25 years ago. She was 28 years old from what my math says. And she was given TPS, temporary protected status, which gave her legal authorization to work in the United States. She was afraid to use her last name because she doesn't want to be targeted by federal immigration authorities. Now, I am sympathetic to someone that's been here for 25 years, but the question is, why has she been here for 25 years on temporary status for a hurricane that might have lasted for a week? Why did she not have to go back home? Is Honduras unlivable? Is no one living in Honduras right now? Is it impossible for you to stay in Honduras because that hurricane 25 years ago has made it an unlivable country? Is the population now down to like almost zero? No, of course not. We have 50,000 or more Hondurans living in this country under temporary protected status from a hurricane that happened 25 years ago. And you start realizing that this country doesn't look out for the people in this country. Now she says she feels angry and she feels sad. And she thinks that there needs to be a way that we give her a green card. I've already paid into the system. I've been paying taxes for 25 years. Apparently, she couldn't read what TPS says. So on one end, I'm sort of sympathetic to a woman who's 53 years old, doesn't want to go start over. She has no one also. It doesn't sound like she's married. She works for Sunnyside Community Services in New York City, where Letitia James is out there actively trying to make sure that babies have a chance to be killed. And she's living a sad, kind of lonely life from what I can tell as well, reading this thing. And she's going to have to depart from her job because they're looking at revoking the temporary protected status. Remember, this is the same status that the Biden administration used for Haitians and a bunch of other people to come in here. And they just basically say, we call it temporary protected status, but essentially now you get to live here forever. This is our like free get out of jail. We can make you a legal resident that you can legally earn money in this country, even though you shouldn't have a right to be here. Currently, the Trump administration is saying migrants who had TPS, temporary protected status, can choose to self-deport, and the U.S. will give them a free plane ticket, $1,000, and give them the future potential to legally migrate to the United States if they want to get in line. That sounds eminently fair. They had multiple different reporters contribute to this, all of whom had Latino names, because that's what we're dealing with right now. That was one story that I thought was wild. And here's another one. This is from ABC. A fear of federal immigration enforcement dulls the Mexican Independence Day celebrations in Chicago, Illinois. Now, you might be thinking, what on earth are you talking about? First of all, when is Mexican Independence Day? I was shocked to find out that it is a thing that we celebrate in this country. And by we, I mean not me, probably not you. It happens on September the 16th, and it has to go for days. Celebrations for Mexican Independence Day, which began over the weekend in Chicago. We're like a week away from Independence Day for Mexico. We're not even in Mexico. We celebrate the 4th of July on one national holiday. You get a weekend for it usually. You get to go see fireworks. If they shoot fireworks off on July the 5th, people get pissed off. This guy's riding a horse around with a Chicago flag and celebrating Mexican Independence Day for over a week. I just like, what? It began over the weekend as the Trump administration dispatched National Guard troops and federal immigration authorities to the city. Advocates say there's fear and trepidation because of the large Mexican-American population is worried about profiled or targeted. Why would they be worried about that if they're here legally? Oh, because they do it illegally, because they're not supposed to be in the United States. You can't make this stuff up. Like, what planet are we living on? How is that a thing? And yet it is. And here's the governor of that state. He's telling you. The federal government doing the job of the federal government, getting rid of people that do not belong in this country. Don't engage with them and don't give them any reason. He's warning people in English that are not legally here, that are celebrating a Mexican holiday for more than a week, longer than our own national holidays for independence. It's unreal.
I'm telling people to know your rights, be extra careful, and know that there is the possibility that ICE will be on the ground and causing some mayhem. Don't play into their hand. And if you have the opportunity, please protest, pull out your phone, video everything that they're doing, whether it's an iPhone, an Android, whatever you've got, and make sure that the media sees it.
Oh, immigrants' rights supporters, faith leaders, and politicians rallied over the last couple of weeks to voice their concerns for the community as fears mount over the Trump administration's vow to ramp up immigration enforcement, aka illegal alien deportation enforcement. Among those supporters is Randira Rendon, a chief program officer at the Resurrection Project, which is a Chicago-based social impact organization that advocates for the rights of immigrants. Not clear what rights illegal immigrants should have or illegal aliens should have, but that's what they do. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm proud of being Mexican, of being from Oaxaca, and that I want everyone to be able to experience our rich culture. Excuse my language, people, but go the fuck back to Mexico if that's what you want. Like, what are we talking about? Take your rich culture and open a restaurant and shut your mouth. The community is living in fear under threat from a federal administration. Oh, that's a lady. Irandira. How do I not know that? Oh, because I don't know what Irandira is. Because it's not a name that you hear in America. I guess the problem, and what I'm saying is probably this. This is probably what's really going on in America right now.
And we won't ignore what our intelligence agencies have determined to be the most lethal terrorist threat to the homeland today. White supremacy is terrorism. And white supremacists will not have the last word. And this venom and violence cannot be the story of our time.
All right, it must be white supremacy. The annual Mexican holiday festival, El Grito, which refers to the battle cry of the Mexicans' War of Independence from Spain, was scheduled for September the 13th to the 14th. So they were going to have a 2-day festival for Mexican Independence Day in the United States of America. And again, you get one weekend for our own battle for independence in our own country. And if you're here illegally and you want to celebrate the independence of the country that you don't live in because you wanted to leave it because it was a shithole country, quoting Donald Trump, you're now living in fear of being able to celebrate it. Have we lost our ever-loving minds? I told you it was dumb, and I mean it. The story of a woman being killed on a bus is also the story of white supremacy. You'll be shocked to find out. This is how every once in a while, even in a moment of like relative sanity, the mainstream media will claw us back and they will remind us that they are in fact retarded, that they don't understand what's happening in America, that they don't realize why people don't want to listen to them. And they bring on people who they already had to cancel because they were useless, like Brian Stelter, to make that message very clear for us. When in doubt, go to a potato-shaped moron to tell you that being upset about a young woman being killed, and yes, she was a legal immigrant apparently from Ukraine. She also had a BLM flag hanging up in her little apartment, and she was also living without a husband from what I can tell. All sad things. And nothing about her sitting in a bus where she's looking on her phone, like so many people do, should have resulted in some maniac pulling out a knife and stabbing her in the neck and walking off. But if you recognize it and you say, hey, maybe maniacs, whether they're black or otherwise, but a maniac who's decided to be arrested 13 times prior shouldn't be walking on the streets with us. Remember, I told you I have this theory, and maybe it's radical, but if you're safe enough to be on the street with me and my children, and our society deems you fit to walk freely, you should have the right to vote, and you should have the right to carry a gun just like I do. I don't care if you were convicted of a felony. If you've been rehabilitated and we deem you safe for society, then that's what it ought to be. The second part of it is, if you are not, you should never see freedom again because you've proven yourself unfit to be part of society. And I have a really radical thing to add to that. You guys ready for something that'll cook your minds? Talking to a firearms attorney the other day, who's a friend of mine, we were discussing, and he said, how radical are you about guns? Because I think that people in prisons should have guns, and the guards should just be set far enough off with walls so that we don't have to deal with them. It would sort things out real quickly. Either they would get polite or they would get dead. Wouldn't that be radical? We're not having those kind of serious, like actual liberty-based discussions in America. We're going to have Brian Stelter tell us that the problem is that you noticed something that's happening. You've noticed that there is a group of people, and it's not all of the people with the skin color, but it turns out that a huge chunk of violent crime in this country comes out of a very small segment of the population. I've got buddies who are in law enforcement that regularly will send me memes, and they reference the 13%, which is a reference to the black population of the United States. Clearly, it's not all black people. I've got great friends who I would leave my children with and who I would trust to defend my life if I couldn't. I served with them. Many of you guys have the same thing. I had guys that were on my surveillance team, salt of the earth, people that I would give keys to my house to. So it's not about skin color, but there is a subset culturally in a group of people that do a lot of violence in this country. And if you recognize that and you say, hey, what's going on with that group? Why is it that they have such a problem? and are not able to assimilate into what normal people would do? Why does a 54-year-old guy decide to pull out a gun and take a shot into somebody's pregnant girlfriend's head? What are we doing here? Then you're the problem. Or so says CNN and Joe Biden.
Most murders in the U.S. never become national news. This one's garnered attention for a couple of reasons. Number one, first and foremost, the recent release of that gruesome video. Second, the energy from pro-Trump activists. They picked up on this video from local news and ran with it. It's a little bit like the times when civil rights groups have raised attention about police-involved shootings. In this case, it is Trump-aligned influencers who are posting up a storm about this case on social media. Really, over the weekend, Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk, other Trump-aligned figures succeeded in making this senseless death a symbol of big city crime.
Right. No, it's the fault of the video camera for capturing it and the video being released. It's the video's fault is what I understood that to be, right? And then it's your fault because you said that even though we see videos on a regular basis of law enforcement officers shooting people, whether they're armed or not is sort of irrelevant. He doesn't touch on that. And usually it's justifiable shootings, whether you like it or not. You can have a justifiable shooting even if we don't like the way that the cop was involved in it. The minute that you introduce the fighting, the resistance, the weapon system into it, if you try to gain access to an officer's weapon system and you get shot, that's on you. There's other ways to handle it. It doesn't mean our system's fair, and it doesn't mean that our justice system even does what it ought to do. But it is a thing. You can walk away from those encounters alive. How do I know? Because people do it all the time. And it's very, very rare that a cop ends up taking somebody's life like that. Even in Chicago. We're single digits in Chicago. The reason that a lot of murders don't make national news is because a huge chunk of them are young black kids that are involved in crime, killing other young black men who are involved in crime. Or they're just in the way, around areas that happen crime. But it's Charlie Kirk's fault and the video's fault, apparently. Wild. You can't have a discussion about it either. You can't talk about the cultural nature of it because what you're going to do is get some lunatic activist like this woman, Nina Turner, and she will go ahead and defy all stereotypes and show exactly how much impulse control she has while on a segment with Chris Cuomo. You guys watch this and tell me if this is not part of the problem.
What is the brokenness of the nuclear family, the brokenness of the black family, the fact that black fathers are absent, that young black men turn to drugs and gangs.
How dare
and by the way,
well, the
this
family,
is also
I
true
think the
for
family in general you can point to. I don't know that one race over the other works.
This is also true for the murderer who killed the two young children, a white man. Will you listen to what I'm saying? I literally said the broken nuclear family, both black families and white families, that murderer.
Right. You singled out black families.
You can't single out family. Chris Cuomo, the great arbitrator, the guy who used to hide in his basement, right, and came out after faking some sort of COVID quarantine. That guy. It's fun. And why is this woman, Nina Turner, why is she dressing like she's a 1950s civil rights activist? Why is she dressing like that? Why is she dressing like it's a pre-civil rights America, Civil Rights Act America? And then I saw this article. Again, I'm telling you, I'm going through a survey of things that are really, really dumb. Ayanna Pressley, who I guess they're not calling it anymore, but was a member of the so-called squad. There's a couple things that are really notable about this. Urges the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, to address black women's unemployment as the figure rises. The Massachusetts congresswoman said black women's empowerment is a key metric of health in the U.S. economy. I don't know if I've ever read anything dumber. And then I realized it comes from a subtitle. Sometimes it comes from like U.S. news. Sometimes it comes from national news. Sometimes it comes from politics. Sometimes it comes from sports. They have this little like sort of sections within NBC News. NBC News apparently has a section called NBC BLK. NBC Black. There's a section of what, like black news or black people that make news. And it's this bald lady. I mean, it is really jarring. She has a very pretty face and she has no hair for some reason. Ayanna Pressley has a real problem and thinks the Fed chairman should individually go out there and solve black women's unemployment because it rose by 1.5%. I don't get it. And some of her quotations in this are amazing. In July, 319,000 fewer black women were employed than in February, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, leading to a 1.3 increase in the rate of unemployment for black women. The rate increased by 1.5% for black men over the same period of time. Interestingly, they leave out total employment because that's not relevant to the kind of point they're making here. She sent a letter to Powell on Tuesday morning and urged the Fed to uphold its mandate to promote the highest levels of employment for all workers, stressing that Black woman employment is a key metric of health in the United States economy. No citation given there. She also called for the Federal Reserve to collect data on changes in Black women employment for the government to be able to create public policy to prevent or stall more losses. I'll say something that's somewhat controversial. There has never been a Black woman that I have worked with in any of my jobs that I would want to be my boss ever. I don't think there's actually any women that I wanted to be my boss ever. But man, there were some really, really nasty Black women in government. It was very common to find this sense of entitlement. And there's some, lovely creatures, I'm sure, as well. But I didn't deal with them in D.C. And you wonder, when Donald Trump is out there slashing government, how many of them had jobs that were just part of the jobs program of the federal government, which is that we pay you to be here and you have zero value added. And we keep finding out that they're the most credentialed and the most employed. And she actually goes into talking about this, how there's a rising rate of college enrollment and Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. Why is that? Oh, because you can get all kinds of federal dollars if you are a Black female who wants to start a business. And that seems crazy to me. I actually thought the Supreme Court said that wasn't appropriate. They certainly said it about college admissions. They disproportionately serve as breadwinners for our family. Let me say that one more time. In addition to having a high rising rate of college enrollment, Black women disproportionately serve as breadwinners for our family, so says Ayanna Pressley. When coupled with the fact that job openings and hirings decreased overall, so everybody's employment decreased in July of 2024, you should see the current economic outlook as a glaring red flag that forebodes danger for the entire country because we've lost 1-something% of jobs. Well, maybe that's true, but I don't think it specifically has anything to do with Black women. And it's pretty interesting. Disproportionately serve as breadwinners for our family does seem backwards. And it does seem like we've lost a step. Now I want to show you something that I actually really agree with. This is a Black woman who I almost always disagree with because I think she has some of the worst takes there are. Her name is Jasmine Crockett. Before we play it, I'm going to give us a break here for the Spotify ads that we do. So you'll catch one of those. Here's Jasmine Crockett saying something that is very novel and got a lot of flack. And people said, look how dumb she is. They played on Fox News specifically to show, look how dumb Jasmine Crockett is. And check this out. She's actually right. Are you ready? You guys are not going to like this one. I promise you.
I want to be clear that law enforcement isn't to prevent crime. Law enforcement solves crime. Okay. That is what they are supposed to do. They are supposed to solve crimes, not necessarily prevent them from happening per se. I want to be clear that law enforcement isn't to prevent crime. Law enforcement solves crime. Okay. That is what they are supposed to do.
I played that for you twice. And she's right, because words have meanings. And it turns out that you cannot prevent crime, which is something that you saw earlier. You could find a guy who just drives by and on one day he looks over and notices that some other guy who he has no relationship with is flicking off the American flag. And that's enough for him to go and pick a fight and then go back and get a gun and then go shoot that guy in the neck and kill him. You can't prevent that. That's in the human heart, it turns out. Man cannot prevent it. Law enforcement surely cannot prevent that. Why? Because law enforcement doesn't know everybody and they're not out there taking them all and praying for them. But what you can do is you can deter it, which is kind of what she's actually saying, whether she knows it or not. Now, maybe she's on the wrong end of this, and maybe she thinks that there's no reason for law enforcement. But that's not what I heard. What I heard her say is their job is to investigate criminal acts that have already happened, and then to allow for the justice system to punish said acts. At the end of it, people look at that punishment and they go, I am deterred from engaging in criminal activity because I don't want that consequence. That's not prevention. That's deterrence. And deterrence is a thing that you can actually have happen because of law enforcement. Prevention, it turns out, starts somewhere else. It starts in culture, and it starts in families, and it starts in people that know you, and that is not law enforcement's job. So like we were talking about yesterday, when you start farming out your value system, you start farming out your ethics, when you start farming out your parenting, when you start farming out your caring professions to people who are not from your country and probably don't share the same values necessarily, when you start farming out all the things that are meant to be done within a family in sort of a God-based unit, It's not surprising that you expect law enforcement to do things that they are unable to do. She's actually right in this case. Go figure. And Jasmine Crockett says a lot of bad things that are a lot of dumb things. But law enforcement cannot be your dad, and it cannot be your mom and love you, and it cannot be your pastor, and it cannot be a replacement for your relationship with God or your valuation of human beings. Those are all preventative forces against crime. Because if you value another person, then you won't steal from them. You'll probably follow things like, I don't know, the 10 Commandments, which is something Trump was sort of referencing. The idea that you would have Bibles as the fundamental building block in education. Or you could act like white supremacy is the big problem. And that's where we need to go with it. Isn't it interesting? Trump was actually correct about a lot of this stuff. And he's correct about this.
For most of our country's history, the Bible was found in every classroom in the nation. Yet in many schools today, students are instead indoctrinated with anti-religious propaganda, and some are even punished for their religious beliefs, and very, very strongly punished. It's ridiculous. Joining us this morning is Hannah Allen from Honey Grove, Texas. A few years ago, Hannah organized a group of her classmates to pray for an injured peer. The school principal declared that Hannah's generous act of love was prohibited from taking place in front of the other students. Didn't like it. The principal didn't like it. Can you imagine? But Hannah very strongly stood her ground, and she won. And Hannah, I just want to thank you for letting the light of your faith shine for all of those to see. We really appreciate it. And where is Hannah? Is Hannah here someplace? I think so. Hannah, stand up, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hannah. I know what you went through. I know what you went through. It's great. Appreciate it. To support students like Hannah, I'm pleased to announce this morning that the Department of Education will soon issue new guidance protecting the right to prayer in our public schools, and it's total protection.
It's a good step. It really is. It's an interesting step because we've been led to believe for the last 20 plus years that we have a freedom from religion in all these public spaces. That we're not supposed to be able to have public celebrations of religion. You can have satanic cults put their icons up inside the state halls. And if you were to attack those things, then you are going to be jailed. But you can't practice your religion. You can't have a peaceful protest sitting outside of an abortion clinic. You'll find yourself on the wrong side of the DOJ for the last little bit. And isn't that something? It really is kind of an amazing thing. Again, just an instinct of how far we've fallen. I'll play something else here real quickly. This is an article about Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who we kind of had some hope for. She's kind of a mixed bag. One of my sort of frustrations with Amy Coney Barrett is that she's basically has two series of opinions. She was pretty good right up front, and then she was confronted with maybe a threat, fear, the thing that law enforcement can't stop, dangerous, stupid, and scary people that will go out there and come after your family. And then she's kind of been kind of squishy ever since then. She was appointed in 2020. She was 48 years old. She came from Notre Dame. She's a Catholic woman. She has adopted children. We've seen some kind of iffy things where she has that sort of squishy sensibility about being sad about George Floyd. And she talks about hugging her kids. And I don't know whether that's politics or whether that's something that really happened, but all of those things are kind of alerting to me. I think women tend to be more compassionate and they tend to be more empathetic, and that's all good. That may not be the place or the temperament that you want when it comes to judging things, which require the administration of a certain amount of force and standing behind it. But in any case, she has this this sit down conversation about the nature of our Constitution and whether or not everything is still squared away there. She said that she thinks the Constitution is alive and well in this country. I don't know how you say that when you look out across the country and you look at the way that it's being administered. She says, I think our country remains committed to the rule of law. I think that we have functioning courts. I think a constitutional crisis would clearly be one in which the law crumbles. Well, I'll tell you my little experience with this, because reading this makes me realize that these people are so far out of touch, they don't understand how insane it is. And maybe it's because they've never had to bring a lawsuit somewhere, or maybe they've never had to defend against one. I had a conversation yesterday with an attorney, about a motion to dismiss. That's a piece of paper that says that this is a frivolous claim against me, and please don't acknowledge it. We'd like to toss it out of court. It doesn't meet the requirements for the law. The quotation I got was $25,000 to $50,000 to draft this piece of paper. A piece of paper that likely comes from a template with a few details filled in and a few hours worth of work on behalf of the attorneys, because this is something that they do when you deal with First Amendment law. A motion to dismiss is a common thing. Just like it would only take me a few minutes to draft a new FBI case. I don't start from nothing. I start from, here's a skeleton outline of what the case might look like, and then I go fill in the details of this is the federal crime, and this is the person, and this is their thing, and based on the following, blank, here's the blurb that says what the federal statute says. Now we go through it and we enter a case. We used to have all kinds of templates, and people who work in law and work in law enforcement run off templates. $25,000 to $50,000 to draft a piece of paper that is probably mostly drafted and can basically be populated with AI at this point. That's a constitutional crisis. That means that regular people don't have access to it. When I was working with Marcus Allen and Garrett O'Boyle, and we'd raised $500 and something thousand for these guys that were FBI whistleblowers, we had their attorneys who are out there currently celebrating a win. By the way, those guys have not been put back into the federal roles, and they have not been paid. So Steve and Garrett still unpaid. We're going to keep marching out. I'll keep reminding you they haven't been paid. They haven't been reinstated. The process is the punishment. Their attorneys came to me and said, we'd like a piece of paper drafted by one of our friends who's an attorney. And we think we can get them to write an opinion, which holds no legal weight, by the way. It's not a decision by a court. It's literally a letter justifying and documenting why we think that they can receive the money that you collected for them, which was a charitable gift. We'd like to be able to get a findings letter issued by one of our friends who's an attorney, and we think we can get it for as little as $10,000, but it might cost you $25,000. Would you be willing to take some of the money that you raised and pay for this findings letter so these guys can receive that money? And I said, let me say this again. You want me to take money that we raised by $5 and $10 and $100 individual donations by over 13,000 people who looked at the case of a couple of FBI whistleblowers that stood up against the government, and they wanted to support them with whatever their means were. And you want me to write a check from that money to a friend of yours who runs a law firm so they can buy what? Another flippin' jet ski? $10,000 for a piece of paper that has no legal bearing? And they ended up not being able to get it done. And they ended up not collecting that money. And I actually had to hold on to it for like a year and a half, 2 years. I held on to like $500 and something thousand of not my money on behalf of these guys who couldn't receive it because the DOJ said they couldn't. And now they still haven't been paid. They have been given all that money by this point now. That's a constitutional crisis. To act like we don't have one and say that the constitutional crisis would be one where the law or the rule of law is crumbling, and that we have functioning courts based on what I just heard there, that's insane. And that's what she said. She did call out Ketanji Jackson Brown, which is kind of funny, and referred to her as kind of singularly stupid. But what a jacked up little world we're living in where that's the case. I'm going to end with something truly stupid because there's two little sides of the coin for the story that I heard yesterday. Again, we hear one thing, you hear what happened, and then you hear the spin on it. And there's no better example of what happened in this flotilla of sailboats off the coast of Tunisia. And this kind of story that Greta Thunberg, which I don't know why I call it Thunberg, but I think that's how she pronounces it, so I think it's funny. Greta Thunberg apparently is on the ship, and they're sailing for Gaza again. So they are flying like essentially a terrorist flag. And they've got these little white girls from Scandinavian countries that are going to go out there and save the poor people of Gaza. And it doesn't matter where you sit on the side of this, or if you sit on my side where you just don't care, like none of these people are your people. That's fine too. You can recognize that there's some like really bizarre instinct here. What is she, like 17 years old or 18 years old now? She jumps on a sailboat. She's got a Kermit the Frog hat. Like she's whatever, autistic or something. She's completely bizarre. And the claim was, this is Newsweek's coverage, that her little flotilla boat was set on fire by an Israeli drone. That's what they claim. I'm going to give you the quick news coverage of it. So they say here, was Greta Thunberg's flotilla ship set on fire by a drone strike? This is what we know. This was as of this morning from Newsweek. A boat carrying several activists, including Greta, was trying to take aid to Gaza. This is just a publicity stunt, obviously. Caught fire outside the port of Sidu Bouzid. I have no idea what the hell that is, in Tunisia, wherever the hell that is. This port city I've never heard of in Tunisia. And it broke down. So here's what goes on. They were the global Sumdid flotilla and the GSF. Their organizers include a vessel known as the Family Boat, and they have accused Israelis of carrying out a drone strike in the waters of Tunisia, and the Israelis have not answered. And then you get the report. This is why we have such a low trust situation. You guys probably saw this too. Some of you are even saying it, that it was a battery fire, that it was a generator that caught fire. I'm going to show you the picture of it right here. So stand by for that. Let me go ahead and get an open screen. There was a picture released of where the fire came from, and then sort of like the people talking about it. And everyone goes, okay, fine. We've got this preliminary report coming in from the Tunisians. I have no idea what sort of accident investigations you have, but that's the fire right there. But they made this salacious claim. The Israelis tried to kill us. And so a bunch of people went like, did the Israelis try to murder Greta? Oh, I saw InfoWars covering it. I saw a bunch of people on the conservative right that were saying it. Oh, the people that are on the left that want to say, oh, Gaza is a big victim and these people are heroes and they're going to go help them out. So you got all these different people with all these different weigh-ins. And my instinct is kind of like, yeah, it probably was a generator fire. You guys just said it in the chat, so I'm going to show you something. Then I'm going to show you the video that you probably haven't seen because the headline doesn't cover the video. And you start going like, I think it was actually a trebuchet, possibly. Here's someone from the flotilla talking about what they said happened, which has been, quote unquote, debunked by the official story out of Tunisia and the Interior Ministry.
Hi, everyone. Yasmin here. The Family Boat has been officially attacked. A drone came right above it, released a bomb, and it exploded, and the boat was on fire. Everyone on that boat is okay. The fire is out. But I want to tell you that this boat was the boat that every person from the Madeleine, the old Madeleine crew, was on, which is Greta, me, Tiago, Schweib, and so many more amazing people. They have bombed a boat once again with civilians on it in Tunisian territory. This is an attack against Gaza because they don't want us there. So we need you to mobilize. Let's not stay quiet.
Okay, so there's their plea. So she's made a lot of assumptions on that. And you say, okay, well, that sounds pretty weird. You guys want to see the actual video of what happened? Because apparently this is the video of what happened. And it actually doesn't look like a generator fire to me. I'm not a big cheering fan of this. I can't stand this young gal. Again, I have to cheer on the true statements of Jasmine Crockett and the possibly correct allegations. You know, who it was that did it is another question. But this looks like something coming out of the sky that hits the boat. So here we go. Okay, the boat's out there. Boom, where did that come from? I turned down the screaming. For those of you who are just listening, if you don't have Spotify, you can't flip over to the video portion of it, but something in a vertical video format that says that it is about, I think, 12:30 a.m. local time from this surveillance video is showing the boat, and something comes out of the sky that looks like a flaming, I don't know, ball of fire from the top left of the screen down to the center and then hits the deck and there's a big flash. So that's not exactly what we're told about being. That doesn't look like a generator fire at all. And again, I'll show it one more time. Here it comes out of the boom. Now you know what to look for. Okay. We're going to do it one more time. I'm just going to play it a few times because it's pretty wild. Comes in from above. I've never seen a bomb that like lights on fire before it gets there. I haven't seen these first-person drones that they use in the Ukraine war. They don't usually like catch on fire beforehand, but that's pretty wild. So maybe it was a flare, or maybe it was someone with a trebuchet that had a flaming goat. Like, I don't know what it was, and neither do you, but I'm just saying, like, when I start looking at the story, maybe they have something to be talking about. And the Tunisian government seems like they're lying about it too, because they said it was some sort of a generator error. Anyway, we're in a strange time when we can look at these people and go, okay, do we have to believe what everybody says? No. Do we have to think that human dignity should exist? Yes. Should we be cheering on the demise of Greta Thunberg, even though she's really freaking annoying and obnoxious? No, I don't think we should. So maybe I'll give Donald Trump the last word on this. I was going to cover a whole bunch of stuff about vaccines because this whole piece, I'll give you the highlights from the vaccine piece, which is what RFK Jr. says. He actually sort of sums it up nicely. Let me do this because I think it actually applies to all of this stuff. Here's RFK, who I'm still going to end up covering some vaccine stuff in the next couple of days, just when it fits in. It almost sounds like he's been listening to us.
I've come to realize that those hearings are performative. They're theater. And, they're not the kind of debate or open conversation that democracy would give us at its ideal. And then all of those senators are taking hundreds of thousands of dollars, including, in some cases, millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry. So they don't want to hear the answers to the questions that they ask me. They want to make a little speech and then shut me down.
Oh, weird. They want to make a speech and shut me down. People are not acting honestly. They don't respect the process. They don't respect the other person on the other end of it. And so it all becomes this sort of like navel-gazing, nihilistic performance. And then I get this great story, which led off the morning. Trump brings prayer and God back to America. This came from the Daily Sun, of all places. And it was well covered by the folks over at Catholic Vote. This was the lead story there. Trump said at the Religious Liberty Commission, we have to bring religion back to America. And I think he's right. So the answer is actually right in front of us, and it has been all the time. Everything from the horrific story of people dying in senseless shootings or nonsensical like fights at a veterans memorial, or sending a flaming goat or a flare gun or a drone bomb into some like obnoxious, ill-conceived rescue attempt for a country that doesn't make any sense to me. All of it is guided by the opposite of what Trump is talking about. And since we're starting this trial for one of his would-be assassins, and I think that's actually maybe something he's thinking about as well, it's a good reminder at this moment. Here's what he has to say.
So let's bring religion back. Let's bring God back into our lives. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Great.
Like, no notes. That's it. One more time.
So let's bring religion back. Let's bring God back into our lives. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Great honor. Thank you.
It's a great way to end it. It's a great way to think about it. It's funny because the solution's right there. It costs you almost nothing. I found the exact same thing when I went to church this Sunday. I've sat there and I went like, for all the frustrations I have, this is the solution to it once a week, to try to regenerate just a little bit of that human compassion for the people around me. And remember, yeah, they're not all whatever their Twitter feed is, or whatever Trump's Twitter feed is, or whatever the mean things are, or the road rage incident. There you have it. I'm going to give you guys little self promo here. If you're listening on Rumble and you have not hit the like, apparently the entirety of the leaderboard on Rumble is based on likes. So go ahead and hit it. That would help us out, bumps us up in there. It shows that they're not counting all of our views. Guys, watch us on Spotify. It's KyleSerafinshow.com. You can watch us anywhere else, YouTube as well. Make sure you guys are liking there. The YouTube audience is really, really good per capita for hitting the likes. So we appreciate that too. Subscribe if you guys want. If you want to support the program financially, you can do so at KyleSerafin.com, or you can be a free member of the community. You can share your thoughts. I would love to hear what you guys have to think about this one. Did Trump just like accidentally land on it? I do think it's kind of accidental. He's at that moment. But also, it's interesting that he's talking about that at the same exact moment when they're trying somebody who was waiting to kill him. It's a good message for this country. It seems like we need it pretty desperately at this point in time. And I don't think we vote our way out of this, which is to say, not that it ends in guns, but I think that it ends in people recognizing something much bigger than voting and what goes on in the silly politics of this country. Because we've got politicians that are defending the murder of babies. So I don't think that's where it gets solved. It has to happen much further back, not in the deterrence, but in the prevention end, the cultural end of it. Maybe that's why it's got to be such a big cultural fight. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day on this Tuesday, September the 9th. God bless you. Mean that seriously for all of you that watch and that are praying for us. It matters. There's an awful lot of stress going on for many of us. And I'm sure you guys know in the background, you guys have your own things going on too. So we pray for you. You pray for us. Pray for America. See you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.